Hello, hello
Hey,
everyone. Um, Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for remember us. And Rick, hello.
hey, Sarah, how you doing? Sorry you're under the weather a little bit.
We cannot tell.
I cannot tell. You just told me you can't tell, but for our audience,
Good. All right. Well, today is Wednesday, January 18. So we are happy to be back and bring another interesting topic. So I'm so looking forward to this session, and Rick is prepare to tell us this wonderful story. So before Rick get into his storytelling part, I'm going to introduce you. So for in case we have a new viewer, this this live show is just a conversation. Rick is an author and he is a 10. So let me introduce you properly. Our presenter today is a 10-time nonfiction book author and an authority on American history. He spent most of his adult life living aboard boats and has traveled far and wide in the Americas. So let's welcome Rick Road. Welcome, Rick.
thank you, Sarah.
All right. I'm so glad that you are here and ready to tell us a wonderful story. So, today's ago, our country celebrated Martin Luther King Jr. Day. His name is on many streets and buildings. He was alive during many of our own lifetime, but I think many have already forgotten his contribution to our United States. I can't wait to hear you reinstill an appreciation of his short but impactful life. So go for it, Rick.
I can't wait to tell you, Sarah, and everybody else watching. Martin Luther King, in his 39 years before he was assassinated in Memphis, he had a profound effect on America. For a time, many said he may have saved America's soul. His father was from rural Georgia and he moved to Atlanta as a young man, an area called Sweet Auburn.
Hmm.
Martin's family, he had an older brother and a younger sister, and the Bible was the most important thing in their house. And his father believed that they have to be educated. And the area in Atlanta, education was the key to, living in a very segregated Jim Crow South. And that area of Sweet Auburn, I've been there. It's just east of downtown, and it's in kind of an amalgamated area. It was back then of professional black people, doctors, lawyers, ministers, which Martin's father was, as well as some row houses and some poor things from very poor neighborhoods. But I got to back up and explain you the environment. There was a thing called Jim Crow's laws. Jim Crow laws were give black people could not vote unless they passed certain really convoluted tests, like name all the counties in Alabama. White people doesn't have to do it. Some of the laws are ridiculous. And Jim Crow was actually a minstrel character in the 19th century who dressed up in blackface and he mocked black people as being lazy and stupid. And that's where it came from. It's basically a euphemism for white supremacy. And it was a terrible system. And after the Civil War, we had a period called Reconstruction where there were black congressmen and legislatures and mayors and that type of thing. But when the federal government pulled their troops out after Reconstruction at the end of President Grant's presidency, things were really bad for black people. The Ku Klux Klan was already formed, but it was doing things that were really nasty. And then in 1894, there was a partially black man. I think he was only 1/8 black, but he set up this case in Louisiana. He got on a train and he sat there. Louisiana had the black section, and the white section on the train, and he sat in the white section. You wouldn't know it, but he did. And the detectives were there and said, "Okay, we have a Jim Crow law. You should be the other side. We're going to prosecute you This case went all the way up to the Supreme Court. And guess what? Homer Plessy lost. And that set in motion things for the next 60 years. They said it's a separate but equal is okay. Well, in theory, it was not equal, but that did all kinds of things. That horrible law in 1896, I think one Supreme Justice ruled against it. Harlan, or his name was Harlan. I think it was Harlan, Justice Harlan, and the other one abstained, and 7 said it was okay. 7 Supreme Court justices that you can do this thing. The states can pass laws that black people can be separated. And there's justice's name was John Marshall Harlan. He was from Kentucky, and he thought that was terrible. And for 60 years, everything referred to Plessy versus Ferguson. Schools were segregated. Lunch counters were segregated. Everything was separate. And in reality, separate's not going to be equal because money's going to go to certain, federal and state money's going to go to something, and it's not going to be evenly distributed. The white people are going to get much larger portion of that than the black people. So that was the environment that Martin Luther King grew up in. And on top of that, after Reconstruction, when the troops were pulled out of the South, there are best estimates, there are 4,400 black people lynched, hung. What that's called it's called extrajudicial thing that didn't go before a law, a judge or anything like that. It just happened, and sometimes these were public events, and it was terrible. So we had all these people were hung. 4,400 were hung in a period of since Reconstruction to about the 1950s when that stopped. And these hunts were done by the Ku Klux Klan. They're not very nice people, and there are still remnants of them, probably more than remnants around today. And it's oftentimes just a public display. 1,000 people would be in there watching somebody hang. Terrible. Not a very nice thing. Well, in 1909, the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People came about and tried to stop that. And they're still around today doing, I think, a lot of good things. Well, that was Martin Luther King's environment, lynching, Jim Crow, and all that horrible stuff that had happened has been going on for 20, 30, 40 years. When he was young, Martin Luther King's 2 best friends, his 2 playmates, were 2 white children whose father owned a grocery store across the street. And when he became school-aged, and when they were 6 years old, Martin went to play with them, and his mother said, "No, we can't play with you." And Martin couldn't figure out why, and he went back crying to his mother, "Why can't my friends play with me anymore?" And she had to explain the hard facts that he was black, and this was the Jim Crow South. And Martin was, he was pretty mad. And he saw his dad try to buy a pair of shoes, and he couldn't even do that. He could do that, but he had to do really humiliating circumstances. But over time, Martin's hatred of white people's, and I don't blame him, subsided a bit. And, in school, he was a very good student, very emotional, though, too. He skipped the 9th grade. And he said when he discovered girls, he had a sharp dresser and had a resonating baritone voice. If you ever heard him speak, you know that. And he was also a very good jitterbug dancer. Well, he skipped his last year of high school and went to Morehouse College in Atlanta, lived at home. And in the summer, he took a job in Connecticut with some friends that work in the tobacco fields. There's a lot of tobacco up in Connecticut. You're from Connecticut. You spent some time there. And he was amazed that there was no prejudice or less prejudice up there anyway. He didn't have to sit in separate restaurants. He didn't have to do that, go in the separate restrooms and all that stuff. And when he came back down south, they took a train. And when he got to Virginia, he had to go in a separate rail car. This was back in the 1930s. And another summer, he worked took a hard job just to learn what it was about in the fields outside of Atlanta, and he had real hard work, and he got a lot of taunts and insults that you would get being a black man. And it was clear to him that he wanted to do something for his black race. So this is baloney. The professor at Morehouse College, Dr. Benjamin Mays, was very much impressed with Martin Luther King, and he told them he was a member of the NAACP, National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, and he often spoke out against Jim Crow. And Martin saw that was the right thing to do at that time. And he also learned that some white folks didn't harbor ill will to black people. And so before he graduated from college, Morehouse College, he wrote a speech called The Negro and the Constitution. And he won. And he was not in Atlanta, it was somewhere else in Georgia. And they're taking a bus back, and they're all the black contestants, professional, fine young men dressed in coats and ties on the bus. And they were sitting all over the bus, and the bus driver yelled at them, "To the back of the bus, you," I won't use the word, SOBs. And they just hurt him so bad. He just did a really nice thing, gave a nice speech, he won it, and then the racism he saw was just horrible. Well, at 19 years old, King graduated from Atlanta, Morehouse College, and he went to Crozer Seminary in Philadelphia. He lived away from home, and he studied Christianity, and he also learned about how Christianity should do things in the social realm too. And he was most impressed with Mahatma Gandhi, the Indian holy man who basically got India free from British rule peacefully without resorting to violence. He was fascinated by Mahatma Gandhi. He finished Crozer, and he got a Bachelor of Divinity there, and he was the valedictorian. Then from there, he went to Boston University, even further north, to get his PhD in divinity. And he met Coretta Scott, who was an inspiring singer from down south. And she was at the New England Conservatory of Music. And then within a year, they married. And then he wanted to go back down south, and she was a little bit reticent to do such a thing. But he was obliged. I came from a middle-class black family in Atlanta, and I'm going to give something black to my black brothers. Don't blame him one bit. Well, he was a gifted speaker, and but in private, he was quite sensitive to criticisms of his speech. I don't know if you're like that too, but it's like, yeah, you think you're good, you show a lot of confidence, but people tell you, well, you messed this up, and he was very sensitive to that. But anyway, he goes back down south with Coretta. This is 1954 now, and he goes to Montgomery to Dexter Avenue Baptist Church, and he's preaching, and he finds the blacks are very resigned to their second-class citizen status. He wasn't there more than a month or two, and another Supreme Court decision came down. This is 60 years after Plessy versus Ferguson. Brown versus Board of Education. They finally rectified a wrong. They said what happened was a little girl from Kansas, a black girl, wanted to go to school, and her house was a white school, and the Kansas Board of Education said, no, you got to go to black school. Well, the justice at the time, the lawyer, was Thurgood Marshall from Baltimore. He said, now let me take this. And he worked it all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court decided in favor of Brown. And the little girl could go to a school. Well, that sent all kinds of waves through the South that for black people and for white people going in different directions. Holy cow. Alabama decided we're not even going to listen to Brown versus Board of Education. We don't have to do it. And and they didn't. But it paved the way. It was, law by the Supreme Court and all over is based on precedent. And Brown versus Board of Education set a precedent that other laws that came up said you have to integrate. Separate is not equal, is inherently not equal. It can't be. And that was right. And one of the justices, I think his name was, I have it down here. I forgot. Well, where is this? William O. Douglas, a couple of years before Brown, he voted for it. He traveled to India. And the first question he got was, why do you people in the United States still lynch black people? And Douglas didn't know what to say. He was dumbfounded. But it affected him. That question affected him. And that was a unanimous decision, Brown versus Board of Education, in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. But like I said, Alabama didn't play by those rules. They said, we're not going to play by those rules. So Martin's back in Montgomery. Brown versus Board of Education had just happened. And there were segregated buses in Montgomery. And the tired lady, Rosa Parks, who's now famous, and she should be, got on a bus, and she was tired. She was sitting down. And if a black person was sitting down and a white, healthy man comes on, he should give up his seat to the black person should give up his seat for him. Well, she was like, no, I'm not doing it. And he was like mad, and they fined her and put her in jail. So there's another test case. And so Martin Luther King and company, and mostly Martin Luther King and other ministers though down there, and he said, well, let's boycott all the buses in Montgomery, Alabama. And boycott means you don't ride the buses. It ain't going to work, but we'll try it. So they tried it. It took a year, but it eventually worked. The black people would walk, they'd carpool. And oftentimes in the carpool, the white police officers would pull the black cars over and give them a ticket for some contrived infraction that wasn't even there. But believe it or not, it did work. It worked. So in 1956, the boycott ended. But when it was going on, MLK's house, Martin Luther King's house in Montgomery, got bombed, and people are really like mad, like they're ready to retaliate. And he's on his front porch, and he said, "We must meet violence with nonviolence. If we follow the teachings, an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, we'll only end up with a nation of blind people who are toothless." He didn't retaliate. I would have been pretty mad if somebody bombed my house just over something like that. But anyway, after Montgomery, he's now a national figure in civil rights, and he faced all kinds of threats. He was beaten, kicked, jailed, punched, and even stabbed badly one time. But he believed in moral power over physical power, and he fought hatred with love, and said, "I'd rather die on the highways of Alabama than make a butchery of my own conscience." Wow. And he was against the Black Power movement was coming on. I remember it at this time, and a lot of white people were scared of it. And he said, "No, that's dangerous too. That's like saying black supremacy. We don't want that. We want to be equal to white people." Well, after Brown versus Board of Education in 1957, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference was formed to urge for more black civil rights. And they targeted interstate busing. Was in that the Freedom Riders. One of the guys right here in Florida at the University of South Florida, I think. Professor Arno, is his name Arno? He wrote an article about the Freedom Riders and Marian Anderson and several other things, and that was one of the next things they were working. And they had a hard time. They went to Rock Hill, North Carolina, and Anniston, Alabama. Their bus was burned. They were beat up, and the federal government again had to get involved. Attorney General Robert Kennedy. And eventually in 1961, the Federal Interstate Commerce Commission ruled against segregation on interstate buses and waiting rooms and the like. So, and then in 1963, Birmingham, Alabama was one of the most segregated cities in the country. There were 17 bombing of black churches between 1957 and 1962. 17 bombing of churches, black churches. I mean, that's ridiculous. And so they went down there and tried to rectify that. That never happened when it happened. So he went down to Birmingham, and they had sit-ins and all peaceful type of things. And he was jailed for, I think, 8 days. And he wrote his famous letters from the Birmingham jail. I'm not going to read them. He wrote them on scrap paper because he couldn't get paper. And basically it was his fellow clergymen saying, look, we got to do this, because he said, freedom was never voluntarily granted by the oppressor. It must be demanded by the oppressed. And he said, waiting for it meant never. And, he's right. If you wait for something, like I say, justice delayed is justice denied. But if you wait forever, the oppressor can say, I'll just wait a little longer. Just wait a little longer. And that means never. So he addressed this in a forthright letter from the Birmingham jail. And his goal was reconciliation with the whites, not a victory over them. But the Birmingham police chief, Bull Connor, and his deputies used attack dogs and high-pressure hoses on peaceful protesters, even on children. And I remember seeing this on national TV, and I'm going, holy smokes. And the brutality shocked many white Americans into saying, this is not right. We got to do something about that. But some blacks with a comfortable lifestyle thought he was moving too fast, and others criticized him for being unwise and untimely. And on the other hand, more militant blacks said he was moving much too slowly. Then in 1963, he gave a speech, I Have a Dream. And it was a 17-minute speech in the Lincoln Memorial. And it's one of the most powerful speeches probably in American history today. And I'll just read a very small part of it. But it got, even John Meacham wrote a story about it. It's a very powerful speech. It says, I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of the skin, but on the content of the character. And he goes on that realm for about 17 minutes. And it's a great speech, and you can look at it as one of the best speeches in American history. And then in Memphis in 1968, Dr. King is speaking on behalf of sanitation workers, and he's on the back porch of the second floor of the Lorraine Motel. He's 39 years old, and he was shot and killed. But in closing, I think there's 3 people in the English language have more profound quotes. I have to rate all 3 of them right up there. Winston Churchill lived to be 90 years old. Abraham Lincoln lived to be 56 years old. And Martin Luther King, who lived to be only 39 years old. I'll read a couple of them, but they're very important. And at 39, he had a profound depth to say all these things. The law cannot make a man love me, but it can keep him from lynching me. Really. Never forget that everything Hitler did in Germany was legal. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy. We must learn to live together as brothers or perish as fools. We celebrated his birthday, the 15th of January, his actual birthday, a couple days ago, and it's a wonderful thing. But there's much more there's all kinds of stories on Martin Luther King, and they're well worth reading. And I'll close it there, Sarah.
Oh, it's really very sad, but very impressive story. Yeah, sad that he had to live through that challenging time, but I'm very, very impressed with his courage.
He did have courage, and he said the oppressor was not going to give it. You have to fight for it, and he fought for it peacefully. Yeah.
Yeah. So my first question for you, I believe that Martin Luther King Jr. was much impressed and influenced by Indian spiritual leader Gandhi. So can you tell us more about that?
A little bit more. Yeah, he was Gandhi. He first learned of Gandhi when he was at Crozer getting his bachelor's degree in divinity. And interestingly enough, Gandhi learned his stuff from Thoreau, the American, in the 19th century. So there's kind of a circle there, a loop. Thoreau was like an activist and a naturalist at the same time, and he had an interesting life. But Gandhi studied a lot of people, and Gandhi studied Thoreau, and Martin Luther King studied Gandhi, and that it worked. Gandhi was able to shake the shackles of the British imperialism in India. So he saw that work.
Thank you. So what did you especially like about Martin Luther King Jr.?
Well, I think you said, Sarah, courage. He had courage. I mean, he had guts and courage to do something that, not like you say, when went to Montgomery, the blacks were like they were accepting their second-class citizen status, and they were willing to be kicked around. And he had courage to say, no, this is not right. But he had the courage not to go too far. That also took courage. So he had a lot of courage.
Yeah. All right. So my last question, what lesson can we draw today from Martin Luther King Jr.'s life?
Well, we are an imperfect country, as John Meacham says. We're trying to. I forgot the word. We're becoming always trying to become a better country. And Martin Luther King saw that, and he knew that we weren't living up to our potential. And we're never there. We're always in the process of becoming as a country. And Martin Luther King understood that, and he was a visionary. He was a dreamer. What's the difference between a dreamer and a visionary? A dreamer has his eyes closed. A visionary has his eyes open. Martin Luther King definitely had his eyes open, and he did a lot of good. In 39 years, we lost this profound man. It's amazing. Sad.
Mhm. I have one picture to show. So let me show the picture. Here it is.
Courtesy of the National Archives.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, for clarifying that. It's very, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for his life that, he fight for the right for
Yes, he did.
different people. If without him, I probably didn't experience as peaceful as I am today. I probably had to struggle with the racial discriminant. What could happen? We never know. But he paved the way for many people, for many nationality, many people that come to this country. So I'm grateful for him.
Yes, he did.
Yeah. So I want to show Rick's book, his number 10 book, with a history book. So here it is. They made America great. So if you ever want to read Rick books, it's available on his website and on Amazon. I put up his website on the screen as well. And I just want to show my book as well, just quickly. And I have one book. No, now I have three books. Three, four. Number four just come on. So this is my favorite book, How I Survived the Killing Fields. It's my story, and it's available on my website. Let me show my website in case you want to get a hold of sarahim.com/book.
Yeah, and people let them know about what's going on in the other part of the world. You and I are the same age, and I remember the killing fields, but we knew very little about them. And this is an important thing to learn about the rest of the world, how bad things can get.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not shy. I'm not. I have courage to tell my story because I don't want any other people to suffer like us. Cambodian people suffer so much. 45 years later, the country struggle. So many people die. Almost about 2 million people die. So that is so heartbreaking. Although I'm survived, but many people lost their loved one. So both Rick and I are member of Bay Area Professional Writers Guild, and this is the website, the information that you can get information from. So the website is bapwg.org. bapwg.org. It's a shortcut for Bay Area Professional Writers Guild, and we both are member of the organization. The organization has been in existence pretty close to 40 years now. Yes. So I'm grateful to find that group. And let me take that down. Oops.
And Sarah's now our president.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, it's a very good story, and it should be reminded. We need to remember important people. There's so many people in this country sacrifice their life to pave the way so that we can live peacefully. And I am I'm grateful for that. Thank you for reminding us, Rick. So our next chat will be in February. So
Yeah, I think first Wednesday. I think I'm going to talk, since it's Black History Month, I'm going to talk about the Underground Railroad, which basically went on for about 2 centuries before the Civil War.
Yeah. All right. We will post the announcement on wherever you watch right now. The announcement will be posted there. Oh, we have two 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 comment from Nicole. Oh no, nice job. Oh, nice job, Rick. You said that's from the Facebook user, and another one, Rick. Thank you, Rick. Nice job. So we cannot tell who that is because they watch on Facebook. If you would like to allow us to see your name, you can click on StreamYard/Facebook. So that's okay. We appreciate you watching and following us, and thank you so much. I hope you can tell other people because the video it will still stay in that page. You can watch the replay again, or you can tell your friend. So thank you for your support. All right, Rick, thank you so much for being here, for sharing the wonderful story. And I'm going to end the broadcast. And goodbye, everyone. Thank you for watching again. We'll see you in a couple weeks.
Thank you, Sarah, and everybody watching.
Yes.